the war against the machines.
Are you worried about an AI taking your job? What if your job is being a philosopher? Well, I've got some AI-generated philosophical thought experiments, and I'm going to give them a review to see if I can make sense of them, and to get an idea of whether machine-made philosophy has anything going for it. At the end, I'll tell you where I got these, and who, or what, is responsible for them. So without any delay, let's start with the cake example. Imagine a delicious cake that is being eaten by a man in the next room. It's not for you, it's just there, and its smell wafts into your room. Does the man have a right to eat the cake? Now my first thought is, sure, why not? The guy's just eating his own cake, right? But it doesn't say where or whose cake this is. So it could be a kind of primitive extraction type situation. Like you're John Locke and you're wandering through the forest and you find an apple tree in the wild. Like, do you have a right to those apples? If you go through the effort of picking them, can you exclude others then from eating them? Some would say that you create a right by putting in the work, but others would say that there's a pre-existing right whereby we all have some kind of common stake or claim in such resources. If you go with the first idea, does smelling the cake, taking a big sniff of its aroma wafting into the next room, does that count as putting in the kind of work that gives you a special claim over the cake? I don't know, but that's a good start. I think we made some good mileage from that one. Next, the perfect roommate. Imagine you have a roommate who is better than you at absolutely everything. Better at cleaning, better at fixing things around the house. Does such a roommate exist? Well, yes, of course, because if they didn't exist, then I'd be better at them at existing, and so they wouldn't be the best at everything, which is a contradiction because the thought experiment clearly says that they are the best at everything, so therefore, ergo ipso facto, such a roommate would actually exist. That's pretty easy. Next, the dreaming argument. Imagine you're a normal person living a normal life one day. However, everything you experience is actually a dream. You have not yet awoken. Does any of this matter? Okay, so this looks like a classic dream or Matrix or brain in a vat kind of scenario. And that's really the weakness of what I'm doing here, is that I'll be interpreting all of these in terms of thought experiments that I already know, not on their own terms. Anyway, getting back to this question, does it actually matter? Now, this reminds me of a David Chalmers argument where he responds to these kinds of radical skeptical scenarios. His argument is that it all depends on when you entered the situation, the dream, or what have you, and who else is in it with you. If you've always been in the dream, and somehow it's a shared dream, then being in a dream only matters in the same way that everything being made up of quantum particles matters. It's just a fact about fundamental physics, or about the fundamental nature of reality, which is interesting, but it's mostly irrelevant to most of your everyday beliefs, like is there a chair, or is this a person, or who am I? And it's probably irrelevant to all potential sources of meaning as well. Okay, that was a lot. I think I'll include a link to David Chalmers' paper on that in the description below. It is really interesting, so I recommend you look it up. Next up, the problem of evil. I suspect this isn't going to be the one that we already know. Imagine you are a benevolent god. You can create any reality you want, including creating life and setting up a system where that life is tortured for trillions of years. Okay, so not much different from this reality then. Is there any reason you would not do this? Some might say that the reason you wouldn't do it is because you're benevolent. But is being good itself a reason not to do something bad? What makes me benevolent in the first place? Or are there moral reasons that are external to me, like that don't come from my own nature or character or reasoning? This one is pretty confusing, which maybe means that it's actually pretty good. And it also reminds me of the Euthyphro Dilemma. I'll put a link to that one in the description. Okay, the Chinese nation. Imagine that you are a member of a particular nation of the world. This nation you call China. China is actually the same size it is in reality, but many of its citizens are blind and cannot see it. A few are not blind and can tell other citizens about it. Is it possible that China is not the same as the nation people would recognize? Okay, so I'm a citizen of imaginary China? Is this like the twin Earth thought experiment? I'm going to have to read this one a few times and give it some thought. Okay, I thought about it. This one does not make any sense to me. If anyone can give me an interesting interpretation of this, please do, but until then, the red pill, blue pill. Oh no. Imagine there is a drug that will cure all diseases. It also has the side effect of making people feel like they're living in a computer simulation. They are in a simulation, and after they take the pill, they can see the pixels, and their world is filled with triangles. Would you take it? This is like some inverse experience machine. You can improve people's lives, but also break them out of a comforting or just familiar illusion, potentially causing a lot of confusion and distress and triangles. Although by the wording, it seems that just one person taking the drug would cure diseases for everyone. It's a question about whether you would go through this event to do something good for everyone. So maybe a good thing to do, but not required. This one is interesting. You get to see the pixels, so you could make your life into some pretentious indie game. The next one we have is the Omelet Parable. Imagine that you are on a train. Okay. You have always wanted to make the perfect omelet. A genie appears and offers you two options. You can have a delicious omelet, or you can have a device that will let you make unlimited omelets for the rest of your life. Would you rather have a delicious omelet or the device? Now this seems straightforward. Why wouldn't you choose to have unlimited omelets instead of just one? But what is the significance of the one omelet being delicious? Is it implying that the device made omelets that aren't delicious? And if my dream is to make the perfect omelet, would it be a kind of annoyance to have a device that could just do it for me? Maybe the one delicious omelet would give me some insight into making perfect omelets. I mean, I'd still go for the device. You could make some money on that, and then use the money to buy happiness. So that's an easy choice for me. Okay, what's next? Mushrooms. Watch my video on psychedelic epistemology. Let's see what it says. Imagine you are walking through a forest at night and randomly select a direction to walk in. You walk for 30 minutes and eventually come upon a clearing in the forest with a number of mushrooms growing in it. It is too dark to tell which mushrooms are poisonous and which are edible, and you are extremely hungry. Is it morally permissible to eat a mushroom? Where would the moral concerns come from here? Again, is this a primitive extraction type deal? Or perhaps something about a duty to keep yourself safe, somewhere between starvation and toxic mushrooms? My intuition here is that it is definitely permissible, because that's a pretty low bar to clear, but there might still be some concerns here, like something to do with inductive risk. You can look that one up too. Yeah, so again, I think we need some more info for this one. Next is the free will theorem. So imagine an alien civilization were found where individuals had no internal psychological indicators of their choice that were necessary for making the choice. The society was such that when you saw the individual prior to making their choice, there were no clues in their behavior that would help you predict what they would decide. Dang, these are getting long. So you could not determine from their appearance or mannerisms what they would decide. The individual was then taken away and tortured for 1 year. The alien civilization called this process freedom. Question: is this freedom? Okay, not sure what the significance of the torture is exactly. That seems to throw this into a bit of confusion. But the idea that there might be nothing about an individual that would let you predict their behavior and what significance that would have for free will is really interesting. So many thought experiments and arguments about free will carry this implicit claim that some level of prediction rules out free will. And I'm not really sure why, well, not actually, I can guess why people think that's important. I'm just not convinced that it is. I read someone recently making the point that we could clear up a lot of confusion about free will if we just recognized a distinction between explanations of past behavior and predictions of future behavior. I just wish I could remember who that was. Anyway, arguments about free will are headache-inducing, so we are going to move on. Okay, last one, and this one looks like a doozy. The evil genius. Imagine you are playing chess and have been checkmated. Well, that's impossible. You are outside for a walk when you are suddenly struck by a bolt of lightning. Before the light fades, you see the face of an evil-looking old man. He tells you that the only way you can continue to exist is as a brain in a vat that is connected to his supercomputer. He says that he has no use for your original body, and he has arranged to have you connected to the computer immediately. Your life will be enjoyable, and you will be able to do anything you want. You'll never die. However, it will seem to you that you're living your life in the year 2000. If you refuse, this evil genius will kill you instantly. Do you accept? Okay, so choose death or an eternal life in a simulation set in the year 2000. So, a few thoughts. First, this reminds me of the Black Mirror episode San Junipero. Second, I'm always partial to some state of living as opposed to being dead, so that counts in the one side's favor. And finally, the year 2000 wasn't really that bad. I mean, what was happening back then? Brad and Jen were still together. You could put your Hybrid Theory CD into your Discman and go home and play Diablo 2. And let's see, I think also Coldplay released their album. You know what? I changed my mind. I think I would choose death. As promised, here is where I found these. These were posted on Twitter by Tomer Ullman. He's a researcher in cognitive science, I believe, and he had these thought experiments generated by a GPT-3 AI, which he had trained on existing thought experiments, and he had them illustrated by this person who you can see here on the screen. That's their Twitter username. Thanks for listening, and we will be back to the regular video essay format with the next one, so look out for that.